The Badlands move like a hungry thing. Wind claws the clay hills. Sun bakes the gumbo until it shines like old glass. Then, a thin crust breaks, and the ground drinks whatever steps wrong. Eliza Merrick learns this the hard way. At noon, the day the sky looks clean as tin, she plants her weight on a drifted bank to study a hoof mark, and the skin of earth gives. Her right leg slips in. Cold mud climbs past her knee. The smell is sour, like a cellar that never opens. She tries to swing back to solid ground, but the bank slumps and takes her other leg. The land holds her like a fist and begins to pull. "Don't move," a voice says. Not close, not far, calm as a man talking to a horse. A braided rawhide line slides across the sand toward her, the end knotted with a small blue bead. Eliza grabs the line. The crust sinks another inch. She hears a slow creak from beneath, like rope on a well bucket. Only the bucket is her body. 20 paces beyond the willows, a man steps from the river shade. He wears a faded wool coat, cut short for riding. A hawk feather lies flat along his braid. He plants his heels, takes a wrap of the line around his forearm, and leans. The mud does not like this. It sucks like a mouth and tries to keep her boot. Eliza hisses. Pull. He does. Her ribs burn. The line bites her palms. With a wet pop, one leg rips free. Up on the ridge, something flashes. Glass or a rifle scope catching sun. The man's eyes tick there and back. He doesn't speak, but the loop of rawhide pays out faster, and he shifts his angle to hide her from that long view. In the river sand by his heel, Eliza sees a fresh print from a shod mare. The brand on the hoof left a neat little crescent in the rim of the track, as if whoever rode it wanted their mark on the ground itself. The bank collapses the rest of the way. The mud swallows to her waist. The rawhide line tightens like a wire saw. Eliza snarls, rage outpacing fear. The man drops into a crouch and braces his back against a cottonwood. For one long breath, they are a chain, root, man, rope, woman, earth. The bank gives a low grunt, and then she slides free. They tumble together into the sand, coughing clay. He lets the line fall loose between them, as if it's a live thing that might bite. "You walked where it looks dry," he says. That is the wettest ground. Eliza rolls to her hands and knees. Far above, a figure lowers a scope. She cannot see his face from here, but she knows who watches. Harlan Pike, range boss for the Prairie Combine, a man who likes to let the land do most of his killing. Eliza touches the rope marks on her wrists, the places old cuffs once taught her to keep still, and gathers her breath. "Thank you," she says to the Lakota hunter. "Name?" He studies her for a ticking second, then nods once. "Chaska." He points with his chin. "We should go before that ridge grows legs." They move. In the churned sand where cattle crossed last week, Eliza spots a sliver of green, bottle glass ground thin by hooves. She pockets it without thinking. When she looks up, Chaska is watching the long cut of the river, the way a man reads a secret. She knows he sees more than water, more than willow, more than mud that pulls like hands. She also knows what waits if Harlan reaches them first. A forged paper, a false charge, a rope. Back on Eliza's burned hearth, a ledge stone hides a charred ledger line that used to hold a name. When we reach that stone, you'll understand why Chaska never speaks his brother's true name. Tell me where you're watching from. Stay with me. When we come to Split Tooth Butte and roll that ledger stone, the whole story will turn in your hands. The day before, Eliza's world is small, honest, and doomed. Her cabin hunkers by a shallow ferry crossing, where the Powder River slows and spreads thin over gravel. Sage grows low and gray around it. A cottonwood leans so close to the roof that it brushes there when the wind walks past. She keeps her boots by the door and her shotgun above it. The only decoration on her walls is a string of red chokecherries, drying for winter, and one blue trade bead tied to a rawhide string, the last of a strand given to her by a woman who never called herself friend, but never left a stranger to die. By first light, she bakes bread with sifted ash to stretch the flour. By noon, she has a kettle of yarrow and wild mint for the ferry hands, who come aching from the pull. She is 29, a widow by paper. sharp-eyed from the years before that, when she learned there are two kinds of debt, the kind you owe in coin and the kind you pay in breath. Downriver, Harlan Pike's riders cut a new trail past the willows. They don't use the ferry. They don't need to. The combine staked their own claims and hammered their own posts. Their brand is a bar laid over a P. They call it simple. Eliza calls it ugly, the way it flattens everything it sits on. She sees it healed white on the hip of every cow that drinks her ford. She saw it sing red the day they pressed it to a stolen stallion and told her the horse had always been theirs. On her shelf sits a folded paper with the county seal, impressed near the bottom. The clerk handed it over with his ring still warm from pressing the wax. It says Harlan has the right to seize her ferry if she can't produce proof of ownership by first snow. Proof means a ledger that burned when her roof did. That night she made an oath with her own breath. I will find one line that can stop him, one line with the right name. She chewed that oath like tough meat for a week. Then she tucked the blue bead into her pocket and walked to the stone she uses as a step by her hearth. She levered it up. She stared at the black ash hidden there, and she did the sin she had not planned. With a coal, she burned out a name that would damn a man whose life had once saved hers. If you want to know why, keep listening. The land is long, and names are heavy. The first sign the fuse is lit arrives on a wind that tastes like iron. Just before sundown, a column of dust moves along the far ridge. Not cattle, men. Even their shadows move in a square way, like they have corners. Eliza lifts her field glass. She finds Harlan by the way his hat sits too straight, as if the wind is a thing that obeys him. He rides with 3 hands. Nix, who smiles like he just remembered a joke he never told. Balmer, who can sleep on a trotting horse. And the boy they call Tally, who counts things in his head and forgets to close his mouth while he does it. Eliza sets down the glass and breathes through her teeth, quiet the way you slow a skittish mare. She packs bread, dried meat, and a small bottle of tincture into a canvas roll. She lifts the shotgun, checks both barrels, then pauses and puts it back. Harlan would like that. An armed woman at the ford makes his case easy. Across the river, a kettle of vultures hangs low, as if waiting for the land to speak first. At last light, a single rider peels off from Harlan's group and takes the lower trail by the river. This is the trail you ride if you want to read the story in the bank. What came down last flood, where the silt piled, what hoof cut it last. Eliza moves into the cottonwood dark and waits with the patience of a woman who has learned how to play weak until it is time to step hard. The rider slows by the ferry. He leans down as if to drink and plants his gloved hand on the post where Eliza's rope lashings hold the ferry line to the bank. His palm stays there a long time. When he rides on, a smear of grease shines on the rope like slug trail. Eliza touches it after he goes. The smell is tallow and ash. If she throws the ferry in current with that smear on the knot, it will work twice, and then the line will slip and spill a load of men into the cold. She wipes the grease off with a rag she never plans to keep. Tick, tick, she says. The clock has started. Your heart should feel that tick now, too. That's how you know the story is alive. The next morning, Eliza finds a child's footprint by the ferry. Small, turned slightly inward, the left deeper than the right. She does not know a child who would cross here alone. She follows the prints into the willows and finds a girl of about 7, crouched with her hands full of willow bark. The girl's face is hidden by a shawl. Her braid ends with a single small bead, the same blue as the one in Eliza's pocket. Hungry? Eliza asks, without stepping closer. The girl nods. Eliza offers bread and watches how the girl eats. Patient, measuring, not the way of a child starved, but the way of a child taught to make food last. When the girl lowers her shawl, Eliza sees the scar at her temple, clean and white. That is a surgeon's mark, not an accident's. Name? Eliza asks, softly. The girl lifts her chin, a tiny brave act, and says a name that Eliza will not repeat here yet. It is a name Harlan. Pike once spoke like an oath he meant to break. That afternoon, Chaska appears on the high bank. He does not ride down. He sits his horse the way a man sits a question. Eliza lifts a hand and waits. He watches the ferry rope in the current, how it sings when the wind lines up with water, how it hums when something heavy moves. When he does ride down, he dismounts without tying his horse and lets the animal choose a patch of grass. It chooses the shade with its eyes half closed, ears twitching toward bugs. Only it can hear. Chaska sets a twist of tobacco on a flat stone between them. He does not ask her to share it. He lets it be a sign. I come in my own way. I leave you yours. You ferried a wagon with 3 men yesterday, he says. I did. One had a case for a scope. I saw. Those men ride with Harlan Pike now. Chaska's gaze flicks toward the ridge. They will come back. They will bring paper with a seal. They will say your land is theirs. Will you stand here when they do? Eliza asks. He does not answer. He looks at the ferry line again, at her knots, at the way she took up slack to keep it from chattering. You tie toward the water, he says. So the line will carry that way, not into your hands. But the knot you use, he taps it. This knot is fast to tie but easy to slide when it is greased. Eliza opens her rag. The grease stain shows like a bruise. Chaska lifts his eyes. There's approval there, that he does not speak. He unties the knot and reties it another way. 3 wraps laid clean as handwriting, the finish tucked with a half turn. Only a hand that knows it can find again in the dark. Now it will hold, he says. Thank you, Eliza says. And then, because the clock is loud in her head, why are you here, Chaska? He lifts one shoulder. You were not here last winter when the river ran white. But I was. I found a man in the ice with the Combine brand, burned into his saddle, and I found marks on his hands that were not from rope. Someone tied him with wire. The wire bit to bone. He looks at her ferry. That man knew names. Those names burned. Eliza feels the bead in her pocket warm, as if it remembers a palm. She does not tell him about the ledger stone. She does not tell him about the name she burned herself to save a life he does not know he has tied to his. Nix rides in late afternoon and does not dismount. He unrolls a paper and reads without looking at the words, as if he has practiced in a mirror. By order of the county and under the seal of... He waves the paper as if that's enough. You are to surrender this ferry to the Prairie Combine. You can appeal in Laramie, but until that time, the Combine operates in good faith and for fair rate. Be smart, Ms. Merrick. We're being nice. Be nicer, Eliza says. Show me the seal. Nix lowers the paper. The wax is dull, the impression weak. Someone pressed a cold ring into cold wax and did not care how it took. She can smell the lie. She looks past Nix. Harlan watches from the ridge, scope down, hands quiet. Ballmer slumps and yawns. The boy tally counts fence posts that are not there. Come back with the sheriff, Eliza says. Bring him and the clerk who stamped that wax. Bring them here while the river's running. I'll hand over my rope when they tell me face to face. Nix's grin folds. He leans low in the saddle to let his horse's mouth worry the bit and spit foam. You're alone here, he says. You should remember that. Eliza does not look toward the willows, where the child shapes willow bark into rings. She does not look toward the high bank where Chaska sits as patient as sandstone. She looks at Nix. I am, she says. And I still said no. Tell Harlan the water's his only, if the river says so. They leave. Dust hangs over their backs. Eliza knows this was not the blow. That was the gentle tap a killer gives to see if a door is locked. Storm signs stack. The river talks low to itself. The sky wears a clean face, but the barometer she keeps in her bones drops like a bucket. At moonset, Chaska appears again, without sound. We have to move you, he says. Tonight, my house will burn, he says, not unkind. They will not do it with you in it. They will do it when you go to the river with your bucket. Do you have something you cannot carry? Eliza thinks of the stone under her hearth. She thinks of the char line hidden there, and the name it once held, a name that can reopen a grave. I can carry it, she says, and looks him in the eye, so he will know she means the weight and the sin. They work clean. They bury the most obvious things in places that look unimportant. Chaska shows her how to mask a pit with sage that still smells alive. He shows her how to walk so her tracks read older than they are. He pays the river a coin of tobacco and a word she does not know. He does not translate. Where? Eliza asks. When at last they stand in the doorway, and nothing that matters is in the walls anymore. The cottonwoods at Split Tooth, he says. There is a den there that breathes. You will hear it. You will not like the sound. He glances at her wrists, where the rope marks are pale scars. But it is a good place to live through men. They move at the coldest hour, when every board creaks loud. In the willow dark, a nighthawk dips its wing and writes a word on the water with its shadow. Eliza carries the wrapped hearthstone against her ribs. The weight settles her, as if a truth made heavy can no longer fly around and peck her sleep. The first blow comes at dawn. Harlan rides in with the sheriff and a preacher, who isn't the one from town. Men step into Eliza's yard as if they have known it longer than she has. The sheriff reads a paper with a proper seal this time, and Eliza almost admires the craft, the way the ring cut wires into wax like chaff from a threshing floor. She is not there to hear it. From the breathing den in the cottonwoods, she hears only the flicker of flame when they touch torch to old pine and dry plank. She hears the roof fall like a man taking a last step and missing the ground. If you've ever watched what you built die in a way that makes no smoke you can follow, you know that silence. Chaska does not put a hand on her. He lets her hear it and breathe it and choose what to do with that breath. She swallows it and says, "Then we go," as if the house burned the words into steel. The ford is faster now. Snow melt up higher woke last year's dead water and sent it running. Chaska studies the surface like a page. He shows Eliza how to find the slowest line, the duller shine, the drift that holds leaf instead of rolling it. He teaches her to listen because the river tells you the rocks are there before your feet say so. They cross. Halfway, a log surges from nowhere and slams the ferry rope. The knot Chaska tied holds. The log swings wide like a tethered bull, then rolls under. Eliza grips the gunwale. Her nails scrape the wood. The child presses her cheek to Eliza's side and does not cry. She only breathes like a tiny engine. Push, push, push. On the far bank, Chaska points to the sand. Look, Eliza sees it. The track of a shod mare, fresh, with a crescent from a hoof brand pressed clear into the rim. The track points away from the ford, but in a line that says, "The rider looked and then turned away on purpose." Harlan knows where they are. He lets the land do the chase. It wears you before it takes you. They move into the breaks, where the clay rises in bad teeth and the wind gnaws the gums. Vultures lift in slow black 2s and 3s from a dead mule. The smell clings like tar. The child tucks her nose into Eliza's coat. Chaska cuts sign without breaking stride. A hair caught on a thorn. A pebble kicked fresher than its neighbors. A place where a snake wrote an S. The wind did not erase yet. Why that hoof brand? Eliza asks at last. On the hoof, not the hide. So a man can claim a horse by the tracks it leaves, Chaska says, even if he never puts a rope on it, and a ledger can say it was always his, Eliza says, almost to herself. Chaska looks at her then, the look of a man who hears a door open in a sentence and wants to see what is behind it. She closes it with a half smile and walks on. At Split Tooth Butte, the land makes a mean face. A seam of rock runs up like a broken jaw. Between two teeth, a cave breathes. A steady, slow wind in and out, warm from some deep place. The sound makes Eliza's skin crawl. She has a private fear of being under earth that moves air like lungs. She did not tell Chaska that. He reads it anyway in the way she stands, in how her hand goes to her throat as if to remind it to keep open. You can sleep at the mouth, he says. You do not have to go in. Do you have a better place? She asks, and hates the edge in her voice. No, he says. This is the one that will not show light at night. Men look for fire. This place breathes it away. They settle. Chaska teaches the girl to shape damp clay into balls that dry hard and dustless. To be a stove you can hold in your hand. He shows Eliza a plant that looks like sage but smells like medicine. He says to boil it and let the steam eat the cough before the cough eats the sleep. He tells her a story in pieces about a winter count, how his people mark a year with one picture that holds the biggest truth. What is the picture for this year? Eliza asks. He says nothing for a time. Then, a brand burned on a hoof, so the track itself lies. Eliza has not heard that in any preacher's book, but it feels like a verse. They move when clouds move, rest when wind rests. The combine keeps pressure on every edge. Riders cross high, then low, then leave a dead calf gutted by the trail, with the bar over P, burned deep while it is still warm, so the smell will sit in travelers' throats, and sour courage. It is a language, this cruelty. Eliza learns to read it because she has to. At a waterhole ringed with white alkali, they find a scrap of paper trapped against a clump of grass. Writing crawls across it in a clerk's careful hand. It is a tally of brands. Date, count, marks. A faint char darkens the edge. Eliza takes it as if it might bite. Chaska watches her face and says, "You know that hand. I know this kind of lying," she says, which is both less and more. The first small win arrives like a trick. At dusk, Chaska lays a false trail over hardpan, toward the red beds where even a good tracker loses the scent. He kicks up a run of dust with a willow branch, so it will look like they hurried. He drops a strip of canvas with Eliza's old soap smell on it, at the fork, where the ground is most confusing. In real life, they turn east, slow as a turtle, hugging shadow, where shadow is thin enough to be ignored. At midnight, riders thunder across the false line, toward the red beds. Their dust hangs pink in the moon. Eliza smiles for the first time in 2 days. The wind costs their last water. The backtrack to the spring would draw a clean line for Harlan to follow. They push dry-lipped into a basin, where the map Carver drew long ago shows a creek that has not run since the war. The girl's mouth cracks at the corner. Eliza wets it with spit and a lie. "Almost there," she says, and her voice does not break. A coyote calls. Another answer. The second one is wrong. Too quick, too exact. Chaska stops and sets his hand low behind him, a signal that says, "Drop and breathe." Eliza kneels, pulling the child in. A shape passes over the ridge. The sound of a leather strap creaks. Then a pebble pops as a horse shifts weight. "Riders," Eliza whispers. Chaska nods once. He points with 2 fingers, one at the ridge, one at the cut to the east, where a slot canyon splits the basin floor. He says with his hand, "We go there." He says with his eyes, "It will be bad." They run bent small. The slot collects the night. The walls go up and up until the strip of sky is a narrow book spine. The air smells like damp stone and old bones. Somewhere far ahead, water talks to itself in a deep place. The child's breath rasps. Eliza rubs her back in circles and counts to 4 with each rub, the way midwives calm a woman between pains. The trick calms Eliza too. She needs the numbers to keep her hands from shaking. Hoof beats on stone. A man laughs thin and mean. A rope hisses. It lands coiled where they stood 3 breaths ago. "They're in the crack," a voice says above them. "Nix." Eliza can hear his teeth. Chaska touches her elbow. He crouches at a shadow where the wall looks smooth. He scrapes with a flat stone and reveals a seam. The seam opens to a darker, deeper breath. The land inhales. Eliza's throat locks. She can't make her legs move. In her head, she is in a collapsed mine again. Wood bending, dust finding her tongue, darkness pressing like a palm. Her chest shakes. Chaska steps in front of her and fills her view with his face. He keeps his voice the same calm he used on the river. "Count the breath," he says. "Breathe when the earth breathes out." He puts her hand on the blue bead that knots his rope. "Hold this. When it is in your hand, you are outside the ground, not under it." Up on the rim, a spark blooms and dies. Harlan's men light a fire for light, not warmth. The glow slides down the slot walls. Heat paints stone the color of blood. Eliza squeezes the bead. The land breathes out. She breathes in. The seam opens enough for a person to slip sideways. Chaska sends the child first, then Eliza. Then he follows, pulling the rawhide line so it does not sing and tell tales. Inside, the dark is soft around the edges but not blind. Blue light leaks somewhere up ahead, where a crack tastes the sky. The passage hums low, a sound as old as teeth. They move like 3 letters written small. Behind them, a rock skitters. A voice says, "Found a hole." The sound of iron on stone. They're widening it. They reach a chamber where the ceiling lets them stand. Air moves through like a slow river. Eliza leans her head back and hears a hollow above. A second room maybe, or a way the rock saved for floods. On the far wall, someone long ago cut small lines in a soft layer of clay. Not words, not pictures, tallies. Winters counted by someone who had no paper. The child reaches up and sets her small hand beside the last mark. It looks right there, like a promise that the count will continue. "Rest," Chaska says. "We'll move when their fire dies." Eliza nods and then freezes. From the passage they just crawled through, water whispers. It is the sound every Badlands traveler knows and fears. A wall of rain far away found a way down. Slot canyons gather storms they did not earn. "Flash," she says. "Flash." Flood. The word fills the chamber like a thrown pan. Chaska is already moving. He hoists the child to the hollow above and sends her scrambling. He plants his back under the opening, cups his hands, and looks at Eliza. Now, Eliza's fear of under-earth lassos her waist and yanks. Her older fear, the rope and the gallows, jerks the other way. The land hums. Water whispers louder. The choice has no good side. She puts her boot in his hands. A rivulet sneaks into the chamber and draws a wet line across the floor. It's not the wall yet. It's the tongue before the mouth. Chaska lifts. Eliza claws for the lip. Stone bites her nails. She finds no hold. Below, the rivulet becomes a sheet. In the passage, a deep voice starts to talk in water. It says, "I am coming." Chaska's arms shake with the weight of 2 lives at once. The blue bead in his rope knocks against his wrist, small and cold. Up above, the child reaches down with both hands. Her small fingers hook Eliza's sleeve. She is not strong enough to lift. She is strong enough to keep Eliza from sliding. For a second, they are a chain again. Rock, child, woman, man, earth. A gunshot cracks from the slot. Stone chips spray into the chamber. Nix's voice bounces down. "You're boxed. Paper says you're thieves. You hear me?" A second shot. The hot whine of metal off rock. A piece stings Eliza's cheek. The flood voice deepens. The first cold slap hits Chaska's boots. He looks up at Eliza. "Breathe," he says. The same word as at the cave mouth, but this time it means, "Do it or drown." Eliza digs her fingers into the rock and hauls with everything a burned house can make in a person. Her shoulders feel like they rip. The child leans back and slides a little, feet scrabbling for purchase, grunting with the kind of sound children make when they move the world in small ways. Eliza's ribs scrape the lip. She gets one hip over. She is half in, half out. Below, the water bites Chaska's knees and starts to talk in words a river uses only once. Harlan's men throw a burning brand into the slot to light the hole. It arcs, lands, and hisses out in the first tongue of flood. The rising dark reaches Chaska's waist. He locks his elbows and gives one last lift that opens every old wound in his arms. Eliza slides into the upper hollow, skin shredding, breath gone. She rolls and reaches down for him. Their fingers touch. The water punches the chamber. The flood hits like a door kicked by a giant. It fists through the lower chamber, tears the breath from the cave, and tries to rip everything back into the slot. Chaska disappears in a white boil. Eliza shoves both arms into the churning black. For a heartbeat, all she feels is cold. Then, rope. Not rawhide, hair. His braid snags her wrist. She locks her grip, digs both heels into the stone, and becomes weight. The child braces behind her, small hands pushing Eliza's hips, so she doesn't slide. "Breathe when it breathes out," Eliza says to herself through teeth, and waits for the cave to exhale. It does. In a shudder, she hauls. The water lunges again, clawing her elbows open with grit. Chaska's other hand finds the lip. He catches it as the flood takes his legs. His mouth is under. His eyes are not. They are clear and patient, like a man holding his place in line. The cave exhales. They pull. He spills into the upper hollow with the calm of a man who knew this was the shape of the day. For a long minute, they lie stacked like driftwood, listening to the flood run its anger out below. When the sound steadies, Chaska sits slowly and squeezes water from his braid. He gives the child a small nod, meant to be a thank you, and not a scare. Wani yetu, he says softly. Winter. Then, in English, this will be the winter picture for my people this year. He gestures toward the seam they came through. Water in the bones of the hill. Eliza wipes blood from her cheek and gives one small, breathless laugh that tastes like grit. You count your winters with better sense than any clerk's book. He nods toward the bead, tied into his rope. This kept your breath lined up, he says. Small things hold a person to the world. Below, men shout and argue. The flood steals most of their words, but the shape of Nix's anger reaches them. Thin, sharp, embarrassed. Stones clatter as someone tries to widen the seam again, then yelps when the water slaps back. They'll camp at the mouth, Chaska says. They'll say they've trapped us. They'll believe it until morning teaches them a canyon's mind doesn't belong to them. Can we go up? Eliza asks. Not yet. He tests a ledge and shakes his head. Stone is shedding. We wait. They wait. This is theme 5, the place that saves you and asks for a toll. In the breathing dark, night becomes a teacher. Chaska shows the child how to wrap a scrap of hide around a stone and twist it until the hide warms. Hand stove. He shows Eliza how to drink from a fold of clay pressed against the wall. The rock sweats and catches clean drops if you leave it alone long enough. He tells them that in his language thank you is pilamaya and sorry is achuta, words that are tools, not decorations. Say the girl's name again, he asks Eliza. She does. He repeats it with a different music. Lakota vowels are rounder than the English ones, Eliza learned. When you speak a name, he says, you lay a track. If you lay it wrong, you teach the land the wrong way to hear you. Then when you call, it does not answer. Eliza nods. Then hear this. Thank you. She looks at the child. Pila Maya. The child hides a smile for a second, then lets it show. When the flood's growl slumps to a steady run, Chaska scouts by feel. He moves like a man who trained his bones to find edges. He returns with a hand full of damp willow bark, and 3 thin roots, he says, will settle a stomach burned by fear. Chew slow, he tells the child. Spit the brown. What is that word you said at the river when you set tobacco? Eliza asks in the quiet that follows. Chaska looks at the dark and answers as if the cave is listening too. Hanhepi, he says, night, and then in English, I asked for a straight crossing. I said I would pay with something I liked. I gave tobacco. If I had none, I would give a story. Eliza understands that. She has already paid with a story she burned. When gray light soaks down from the hidden crack above, Chaska says it is time. The men will be stiff, he says. Fire makes them slow in the morning. The canyon will cover our steps if we choose the dry places. He eyes Eliza's torn hands. Can you climb? I can do the thing I hate, she says. I have practice. He passes first, testing each hold. He shows the child where to put her toes and praises her without making it a flag. The praise is a low hum, like the cave. Eliza follows, face pressed to stone that smells like cold iron. On a narrow ledge, they crawl sideways toward a chimney that splits the wall. Chaska wedges himself there, back on one side, feet on the other, and makes a ladder of his body. The child uses his thigh and shoulder. Then, Eliza. At the top, a skin of light films a crease. Chaska blows on it gently, as if to clean a window, and the crack opens to morning. They emerge into still air and a sky clean of smoke. On the canyon floor, a curl of ash marks where Harlan's men made their night. The ashes are cold. The men are gone. They learned, Chaska says. Even slow men learn when water tells them. They move east along the rim, staying low. The basin beyond looks brushed, as if the wind combed it in one direction. Eliza swallows and tastes dust. She scans for sign. 200 paces out, a circle of flattened grass catches her eye. In the center, a coin-sized piece of glass lies beetle green. She crouches. It is bottle glass set in a thin brass ring, a poor man's lens ground to fit a scope. She looks up to tell Chaska and sees the rest. 3 horse prints, fresh, the crescent from the hoof brand clear in one. Nix sat his horse here, watching the canyon mouth at dawn through a crippled eye. She desires, in a hard, bright way, to kick the lens into the gorge. She pockets it instead. This was his, she says. Everything is a track, Chaska answers, even what a man leaves because he is careless. They walk until noon sags. The land opens and flattens toward a broad wash lined with cottonwoods that look like green flames. In the shade they find a broken wagon tongue, sawed clean and left like a promise. Under it, tucked in dust, lies a folded scrap of paper pinned by a small stone. Eliza's skin knows before her eyes do. The clerk's hand, date, count, brand marks. A notation, 1 bay mare, bar over P, hooves marked, witness HP. Eliza holds the paper long enough for it to weigh her arm. He wants us to see this, she says. Or he wants us to think he doesn't care if we do, Chaska says. Both are the same kind of talk. The child points at the initials, HP. Eliza's mouth goes dry. Harlan Pike, she says. He wrote himself witness to his own lie. Then bring him where another witness cannot be burned, Chaska says. He lifts his eyes toward the far hills. Smoke smears the horizon in a thin line. Fort Klein. Soldiers. They like paper. They like to put papers on top of stories. Eliza's shoulders knot. Soldiers mean a clock and a book and men who obey an order even when it's wrong. But a fort also means a desk that Harlan can't flip and a safe that isn't a cabin step. The ledger stone in her bundle thumps once against her ribs. A quiet heart. She feels the scar where she burned a name and thinks of the oath she made. Before snow, she says, we meet a sheriff, a clerk, and a captain in one room. We set the stone on their table. We lay the brand and the hoof side by side. We let the room decide which line is true. Chaska studies her face for the shadow of a lie and finds none. He nods. Then we need a mouth that talks to soldiers first. Not mine. Reverend Hollis is 2 days downriver, Eliza says. He speaks wild land and office both. Chaska's jaw tightens the way it does when a plan scuffs against something he knows and hasn't yet said. He will talk if he hears the right story, he says. But doors closing sound the same in all languages. They set for the mission. This is the cost of refuge. They must leave it. The cave saved them, and now it demands they carry their fear into open light. As they break camp, the child coins a game, counting vultures. Every time a black wing tips, she taps Eliza's sleeve. 1, 2, 3. It's a small song, and it keeps their pace human. The first night on the open flats, Chaska shows Eliza how to build a fire that no man can see. A Dakota fire hole. 2 small pits linked underground, so flame has a mouth and a nose, and no tongue. He tells her to sit on the windward side and put her hair over the hole when a rider might be near. Smoke loves hair, he says. It's a small thing. It will hold it for you. They eat chokecherry cakes and the last of the dried elk. After, Chaska cleans his knife with a handful of sand and sings under his breath, not to the fire, but to the place where they will sleep. When you sing to a place, he says, not stopping his small work, you tell it you are not a threat and you are not blind. Places like that. Men forget to say it. Eliza listens and thinks of the ledger stone, a thing that doesn't listen but can still be moved. The blue bead against her palm warms and cools with the beat of her blood. She wants to tell him everything, but the telling is a gate that doesn't open small. She waits. Toward dawn, hooves murmur across the far flats. Not many. 5, maybe 6. Eliza and Chaska trade a look, then snuff the hidden fire with earth. They crouch behind a low bank until horses appear on the ridge, a scout band from the fort, not combine riders. Their coats are Union blue bleached to sky, hats too stiff for the wind they wear. The sergeant squints at the lay of land as if the river wrote something rude and he means to answer. They pass without turning heads. Chaska breathes out through his nose in a way Eliza has learned means not good, not bad. Watch. They reach Reverend Hollis's mission when the sun sits low behind cottonwoods and turns their trunks to fire. The mission is 3 rooms a man added to, in the wrong order. A school bell hangs crooked from a beam. Somebody carved a small turtle into its wood. Children's voices drift from the back where a garden tries to live in soil that resents being asked. Hollis himself comes to the door with a hoe in his hand and a face the color of milk burned on one side. He looks long at Chaska first and nods without pretending he didn't. "Friend," he says. "Water? Corn cakes? I'm better at boiling than baking." Inside, the mission smells like chalk, sweat, and a faint ghost of frankincense from a service he tried to make better with the wrong smoke. Maps litter a table. Most are wrong in ways that help men who wear boots and hurt men who don't. On the wall hangs a single framed line from a book without the rest of the book. "Do justice. Love mercy. Walk humbly." Hollis glances at it, the way a man glances at a grave, checking to see if the dirt still settles. They trade the first pieces of the story, while the child rolls a bead between her fingers and watches dust in light. Eliza hands Hollis the brass ring lens and the brand tally. He reads like a man listening to a horse breathe. He sets both items down, as if their weight might change the table. "Harlan Pike has the captain's ear," he says. "He brings beef through the gates and writes the rates. He says he keeps the forts fed cheap. He says he keeps the territory safe. Men like to eat and feel safe. I can make them like truth better," Eliza says. "It's not pride. It's a tool. I have a stone that used to hold a name. The name is burned. The edge of the line remains. It shows who was owed for this ferry and who signed. Those men are not Combine men. They are dead, but their line is in the rock." Hollis looks at her hand on the canvas bundle. He hears the words she didn't say. "You burned a name," he says softly. Eliza meets his eyes. "Yes." "Your own?" "No." He looks at Chaska. Chaska looks at the wall, at the line about justice and mercy. "Some truths talk like sickness," he says. This is one. Hollis is quiet a long time. Then he makes the choice that will cost him. "I will take you to the fort at noon," he says. "We'll go through the front gate. You'll carry your stone uncovered. No one shoots a woman carrying a rock in daylight if they plan to eat supper with clean hands. Men eat with dirty hands all the time," Eliza says. Hollis almost smiles. "I know, but they prefer the story where they did not. They eat because warriors and widows still need bread." Hollis's corn cakes are as lumpy as he warned. The child laughs when one breaks in half and looks like a map of a place nobody cares for. Hollis teaches her a song about rain that is silly on purpose. Chaska listens and does not smile, but something eases in his shoulders that was wound since the cave. That night, the cost of refuge arrives. A face appears at the mission window, quick as a reflection. Hollis moves to the door and opens it before a knock. A woman steps in with wind in her hair and dust to her ankles. She carries herself like someone who keeps ledger lines in her head and never lets a number cheat. "Marta Pike," Hollis says wearily, and Eliza feels the name like stepping on a hidden nail. Marta is Harlan's sister. Where his meanness shines, hers hides behind careful. She nods to Hollis and lets her eyes walk across the room like she counts it. They pause on Eliza's bundle and move on, and that false move tells Eliza everything. "I heard you had guests," Marta says. "I brought coffee. It's a pity to drink water as if we're beasts." Hollis shifts his hoe like a shield. "We're fine. You're not." She sets the pot with a neat click. "Harlan will be at the ford at first light with the sheriff and soldiers. Let me help you avoid an error that will require funerals." She turns to Eliza, as if only now noticing her. "Ms. Merrick, I've heard of you. People speak of your ferry. Hardworking, honest." She lets that praise sit like bait. "You should give up the rope. You will be paid a fair rate." "Your rate or mine?" Eliza asks. "The rate that carries this country forward," Marta says. And the word forward sounds like a wagon crushing grass. "The Combine will build the bridge the Army asked for. No more ferries. Safer, cleaner, efficient." Eliza sets her hands palm down on the table, so the rope scars show. "Bridges are fine. Men who build them on other men's names are not." Marta's eyes cool a degree. "Then you should be very careful which names you burn." Chaska's head turns a fraction. He doesn't reach for anything. He doesn't need to. Hollis clears his throat. Marta, you can warn. You cannot threaten. I did neither, she says mildly. I'm saving you a sermon that will cost more than it buys. She gestures at the framed line on the wall. Mercy sometimes looks like coffee. Drink it in the morning. Bring the lady to the fort. Don't bring that rock. She nods at Eliza's bundle. Rocks sink women. She leaves. The door's soft close. Sounds like a lid. When Hollis is sure she is gone, he lets out the breath he held so long it must be tired. She's the dangerous one, he says. Harlan likes the noise. Marta builds the room he makes it in. Chaska stands. We leave before dawn, he says. We cannot walk under Harlan's sun. They travel in the hour the coyotes stop telling jokes and go quiet. The mission drops behind like a small fire you don't look back at, for fear you'll see it go out. On the river bend below the fort, cottonwoods pour their smell into the air. Green, sweet, a lie, because the river is high and mean. Eliza watches for the ferry rope as a habit. Her hands open and close without a thought. The child counts vultures again. 1, 2, and then stops, finger midair. The girl points to the mud bar, where the ford flattens river into stepping stones. Small tracks stipple the wet, barefoot, narrow, familiar. They run to the water and vanish. Eliza, Chaska says, and she is already scanning for other sign. There, deep prints, boots, a man dragging weight. A rope mark cuts a straight line between prints. The small tracks were pulled, not walking. They were taken. The girl tears free and runs down the bank. Eliza catches her, the two of them tangling like rope and post. A quick wrestle of fear. We don't go to water when men wait, Eliza says. She can hear her voice from far away. We don't go to water when men wait. Chaska kneels at the rope mark. His fingers read like eyes. 2 men, he says. One heavy, one careful. The careful one places his feet. The heavy one trusts his size. They crossed at the old ford, not where soldiers watch. They knew. Nix and Balmer, Eliza says. Tally counts. He doesn't pull. Chaska looks at the far bank where scrub hides a low cut. He finds the next sign in the way a willow leaf floats and turns and catches on a twig that points like a finger. The girl's bead glints in the mud 2 steps up from the water. Not the blue bead, a yellow one. Eliza crouches. It's from the child's braid. She set it there, or it broke. Either way, it says, I went this way. It is a message that trusts a mother will read it. Soldiers, Hollis says, breathless, hurrying up with his hat in his hand. They're at the gate. Marta's there. She smiles. Eliza holds the yellow bead and feels the ledger stone like a second child under her arm. 2 clocks start at once. 1 is for the girl. 1 is for the table in a room where men with pens think their lines beat river lines. This is theme 6. Evidence, doubt, and a resolve that feels right because it is quick. Eliza's mind leaves a clean track for her body to follow. We split, she says. Hollis, you take the stone to the fort and make a noise big enough to fill the yard. Use the line on your wall for a drum. Talk mercy in a way that makes a captain angry at himself if he doesn't listen. Make him bring the clerk, the book, and the stamp. Make him sit with the seal warm in his hand. Hollis swallows. And you? We take the cut, she says to Chaska. We follow the rope. Line. We get her back before Harlan trades a child for paper. It's a trap, Hollis says. All traps are. We still hunt when we're hungry. Chaska's eyes find hers. If you're wrong, then my stone sinks me. But if I'm right, your winter count gets a better picture. He nods. Agreement is the quietest word they share. They move. Chaska shows Eliza how to read the wet rope line, where the water lifted it and set it down. When the mark blurs, he listens to wind instead of looking at ground. Men don't know where their breath goes, he says. It carries their plan. It tells the sage. In a scrub pocket where cattle made a sleeping place old, they find a hard thing to hold. A small satchel, leather, cut open with a neat X. Inside, pages. A parish book's torn leaves. Names half there. Dates smudged. The bottom edge is black with old char. Eliza's stomach goes cold. She recognizes the hand that did the copying and the hand that did the tearing. What is this? Chaska asks. She gets the words out, because the only sin worse than this secret would be to keep it now. I burned a name out of the original ledger under my hearth. I did it when I thought Harlan had killed the man who owned this ferry. I did it to erase a line he'd used to claim what was not his. Later I learned the man wasn't dead. He was hiding. Her breath shudders. He gave me the ferry to keep it out of Harlan's hand. I burned his name anyway. This copy is the proof before I turned it to ash. Someone carried it here to bait me. Chaska's face does not accuse. It reads the new shape of the day. Who knows about that stone? He asks. 3, Eliza says. Me, the man who signed the line, and the clerk who pressed the seal that day. Her mouth tastes sour. And now, whoever cut this satchel. Chaska turns the leaf so the light grazes it. The angle of the char shows a quick burn, not the slow cook of a house fire. He points at a tiny smear in the margin, streaked wax. This page touched a seal, not yours, not mine, a new one. Fort Seal, Hollis says, catching up and seeing enough to pale him. Marta had the captain's desk open yesterday. She brought coffee. She's making a room, Eliza says, hearing Marta's voice. Rocks, sink women. She's setting the table before we arrive. The resolve that takes Eliza then is false, but sweet. We can turn it, she says too fast. We bring the child out in front of the gate with the rope marks on her wrists for every soldier to see. We put the stone on the ground, where the dust will hold its shape a long time. We hold the lens up and tell them a hoof brand lies. We shame Harlan in the yard. Men don't like to be seen eating with dirty hands. It might work, Hollis says. Hope a poor coat he wears anyway. Or Marta lifts the child and says the combine rescued her, Chaska says. And the captain nods because it makes his day smaller. The wind shifts. The smell of horses rides down the cut. Chaska lifts his chin. He puts the satchel paper back where he found it and covers it with the same dust that printed it before. We go quiet, he says. We go now. They slip along the cut between sage and the indifferent eye of the sun. The rope line leads them to an oxbow where the river slows before it decides whether to turn violent. Cottonwoods lean in like men around a card table. Voices slide through leaves. Nix and Balmer. The child's voice too, steady and small. I need to pee, she says. Balmer laughs. You can go in your dress. The river will wash it. A splash, a squeak, a slap. Eliza moves without asking herself. She is a woman with a burned house and a ledger under her arm. There is no other version of her in the world. Chaska flows with her, not behind or ahead, but like two lines that know where the other means to be. They come to the edge of trees and stop, because stopping now is the only way to step clean. The child stands on a sandbar, rope around her waist, hands free but small. Nix squats by her to tie the line to a root and glances up at the same moment Eliza glances down sight at him. Sight without a gun, but sight with a parent's hard aim. He grins with half his mouth. Look what the river brought back, he says lightly. Ms. Merrick and her pet. Chaska's voice comes flat and careful. 2 men, 2 ropes, 2 shots. That is your number. Nix's grin fades a shade. Balmer shifts his weight and lets his hand rest near his belt knife. The move of a man who thinks he won a fight last time, with the same hand. Where's Harlan? Eliza asks. Talking to friends, Nix says. He sent us to keep the little witness clean. Eliza's eyes flick to the child's wrists. Rope marks redden them fresh where the line rubbed. The sight flares something old and iron in her. Let her walk, she says. She walks when a paper walks, Nix says. He pats the rope. You like knots, lady? This one's pretty. I learned it from your new friend there. He nods at Chaska. 3 raps clean his handwriting. Holds like a prayer. Chaska's face doesn't change, but something in him goes very quiet. You were at the ferry at night. Nix winks. I watch a man tie once and I know him. We trade, Eliza says. She shoulders off the canvas bundle until the stone stands plain in her hands. The sun catches its blackened edge. Even Nix's easy eyes sharpen. Child for rock. Balmer snorts. Rocks sink women, he says, and Eliza tastes coffee in the words. Not this one, she says. This one floats men. Nix chews the inside of his cheek, calculating. Bring it, he says at last. Slow. Chaska's fingers brush Eliza's hand. He writes in the small touch what he doesn't say. Not yet. We count steps, Eliza says, stalling to see which way the wind bites. I come 5. You send her 2. I come 5. You send her 2. That way no one drowns and nobody gets brave. Balmer rolls his eyes, but Nix nods. 5 and 2, he says. Let's waltz. Eliza takes 5 steps. The sand sinks a little under each heel. The stone drags at her arms. She thinks of all the times she lifted and lowered the ferry rope, how her hands learned the river's pull and push. 2, she says. Nix flicks the rope at the child's waist. She stumbles forward 2 steps like a toy pulled from a shelf. Her face stays company stern. She learned that from Eliza in a day. Eliza's chest tightens. Good, she says. Now 5. Chaska stands still as a drawn line. His eyes don't leave Balmer's hands. The cottonwoods listen with their leaves. Vultures tilt over the bend as if certain the day will feed them. Eliza reaches the last 5. The stone feels like a head in her hands now, a heavy old head that knows too much and wants to sleep. Nix's jaw works. He motions with his chin. Send her. 2, Eliza says. Then 2 more. You change the song, Nix says. You always wanted to lead, she says lightly, because a joke is a coin that spends in any camp. Now do the pretty gentleman thing and step back so a lady can pass. For a second, the day could still go either way. Then a shout cracks the green. Sergeant, over here. Soldiers, Marta's voice. The fort heard the noise Hollis made and rolled it downriver like a barrel. Blue coats flood the bank behind them. A captain stiff with importance rides up to the edge of the sand and squints as if a river is a thing that needs saluting. Eliza Merrick, Marta says, smiling like a knife under cloth. Don't drop that rock. It looks heavy. It would be a sin to see it break a toe. Chaska does not move. Balmer's hand tightens on his knife. Nix flinches at the captain's voice and, without meaning to, jerks the rope. The child slips. The river steps into her shoes. The current pulls her sideways, with the smile of a thief who knows you can't chase and hold a stone at the same time. Eliza moves, and everything that made her falls into line. She lets the ledger stone go. It drops into the sand with a gravity that makes a sound. She dives. The rope at the child's waist snaps taut and jerks her under. Eliza's hands catch rope and skin. Water closes over both of them and fills Eliza's ears with the simplest sentence in the world. Live. A rifle bolt snicks behind her. Someone shouts an order. Someone else ignores it. Chaska launches like a thrown spear, hits the rope where it goes to the root, and saws his knife once. The line parts. The child tumbles free into Eliza's arms. Together they break surface, gasp air that tastes like horses, and stagger toward the cut. Nix curses, real and scared. He lunges to grab the child and finds Chaska's shoulder instead. It is a mistake a man makes only once. Chaska turns and places Nix face first, into sand with a motion that looks like water, changing its mind. Balmer steps in with the knife and meets the back of Eliza's rock at the base of his wrist. No, not the ledger stone. A different rock her hand found without thinking. Bones make a sound like dropped green wood. The knife goes away. Sergeant, Marta cries, outrage softened to silk. Protect the child. Soldiers spill like spilled cards. A boot lands on the canvas bundle. The ledger stone shifts. The captain sees the blackened edge and the neat lines cut into the face and understands everything he needs to for today, and nothing he needs to for a life. He looks from Eliza to Marta to Harlan riding hard along the bluff, with the sheriff's star winking at his side. Arrest them, the captain says, pointing in 3 directions at once. Hollis shouts over it all, voice shaking and strong. Do justice, love mercy, walk humbly. He points at the child's wrists. Which of you will swear you didn't see those rope marks? Which of you will put your hand on the seal cold and call it warm? A trumpet blares at the fort. A new dust cloud rises from the south. Another column of blue, late to the sermon and eager for a different one. The captain's eyes flick to it, calculating. Harlan's hat brim doesn't move in the wind. Marta's smile does not change. Chaska's hand closes on the ledger stone's canvas strap and pulls it 1 foot closer to River and away from Boots. Eliza sets the child behind her legs and meets the captain's eye as if this is a kitchen and he is a guest. "You'll want to hear this rock," she says, voice slow enough for the men whose days run too fast. "When we lift that ledger stone and you see the burned line and the edge of the name that was there, you'll understand why Chaska never speaks his brother's true name, and you'll understand the price I already paid." "Captain," Marta says sweetly, "don't let a woman make a crowd into a court." The captain opens his mouth to speak the thing a man speaks when he is more afraid of a woman's calm than a man's knife. A trooper sees a figure slip toward the cut, small, quick, braid flashing a single yellow bead, and shouts, "Child, at the water!" He fires without order. The shot slaps the river, then pings off a stone. The child vanishes into willow shadow. "Eliza!" Hollis cries. Chaska's head snaps. He moves, and the line of soldiers move to cut him off, because that is what lines do. Nix hauls himself up spitting sand and reaches for the fallen rope with a look that says he will pull the world down if he can't have a peace. The ford, the law, the combine, the mission, the cave, they all tilt in the same second. The child is missing into the willows. Soldiers pour across the ford to block the cut. Harlan rides in with the sheriff. The ledger stone sits within a kick of the river's hungry mouth. The willows swallow the child like rain swallows a spark. Soldiers fan to block the cut. Harlan rides down with the sheriff, hat straight, eyes colder than the river. Marta lifts her hand like she is calming a church. The ledger stone sits 1 kick from the water. The ford hums. It smells like iron and willow sap. "Hold your lines," the captain shouts. His voice is brave because it has to be. Bluecoats bunch and unbunch, boots slurping in the mud. Eliza runs low into the green. The willow stems whip her coat and mark her cheeks. She listens like Chaska taught her, not to noise, but to shape. Water speaks in patterns. Feet change those patterns. The child's breath is a quick thread close to the ground. A branch ticks. 3 short, 1 long. The signal the girl made up last night when she wanted another story. Eliza follows the tick, like a mother follows a song. Nix crashes after her, cursing. Sand sucks his heels. Balmer clutches his broken wrist and staggers along the bank, blood stringing from his hand. "She's right there," he barks. Chaska cuts a different line. He moves at the edge of sight, where shadow forgets to look. He passes the ledger stone and touches it once. A promise. Marta sees the touch. She does not blink. In the willow tunnel, the air is wet and tight. Eliza drops to hands and knees and crawls. The ground smells of crushed mint and river skin. A small braid glints ahead. Yellow bead. Eliza reaches. The child bursts toward her and hits like a bird slamming a window. Fingers dig. Arms hook. Bodies find their shape. "Got you," Eliza breathes. "Got you." A rope hisses. It bites the willow just above Eliza's head. Bark spits. Nix whoops. "Pretty," he says. "Let's pull 2. The line goes taut. The willow bows. Eliza rolls with the child, keeping her body between rope and girl. The knot snags. Nix yanks again and the branch snaps. He falls backward into the mud with a sound that pleases the river. The child laughs without meaning to. It is a small silver thing. It gives Eliza strength she didn't have. "Out!" Chaska's voice cuts through green. He's at the opening back to the willows, watching what the soldiers do. The captain remembers his own order and waves men to stand off. Harlan ignores him and slides down from the saddle, snow-clean cuffs in mud. His smile is for the crowd. Eliza and the child break from the willow shade and into open sound. Everything is sharp. Sun on wet leaves, the grit in Eliza's teeth, the click as Chaska sets his knife back in its sheath rather than brandish it. He has a better weapon. Time. Hollis pushes forward in his black coat, hair wild, bell in his hand. He lifts it and rings a single hard note. It hammers the morning flat. Heads turn, even Marta's. "We are in public," Hollis says hoarsely. "Let the river and the rock hear. Do justice. Love mercy. Walk humbly. Walk carefully," Marta murmurs. soft enough for only the captain and Harlan to hear. Stones roll. Harlan steps onto the sandbar, as if it's a stage he built. "Captain," he says, "arrest that man for assault and theft." He points at Chaska. "Arrest that woman for trespass and obstruction." He points at Eliza. "This child is Combine concern. Our men found her wandering, frightened. We were bringing her to safety when these two interfered." The child doesn't hide behind Eliza now. She steps around her, rope marks plain, and lifts her hands. They are small, red-striped where the line burned. She doesn't speak. She doesn't need to. The marks speak like handwriting. The captain sees. His jaw moves once. "Who tied you?" he asks the girl. Before she can answer, Marta glides between them with a mother's face she borrowed. "Careful," she tells the captain. Children hear the last voice that spoke to them. They want to please. She looks at the girl as if coaxing a cat. "Sweetheart, did these people scare you?" The child's mouth opens. A soldier's boot shifts on a slick rock. He windmills. The line of men tilts. The ledger stone's canvas strap slides nearer the lip. The river leans in. "Stop," Eliza says to herself 3 times. She sets the girl behind her again. Then she does the hard thing. She lifts her hands, empty, and steps toward the rock. "Look here," she says to the captain, not begging, not daring. "Look, and decide with all eyes on you." Chaska stands where he is. He knows the shape of this choice. In his chest, 2 drums argue. Save the proof. Save the child. He hears what the cave taught. We breathe only when the earth lets us. He sets his hand on the child's shoulder and feels a small tremor go through bone to bead, bead to rope, rope to his own skin. Eliza kneels in the wet sand and pulls back the canvas. The ledger stone shows its face. Lines cut clean as a clerk's pride run across it. Date, small mark, larger mark, witness names. One line is burned, a dark scar where letters used to live. At the end of that scar, half a serif survives. A hook, the edge of a letter that matters. Marta steps close with a smile, made of law. "A rock without a name is only a rock," she says. "A rock under oath is a record," Hollis says, voice finding a new strength. "Ask your clerk which desk slab he uses when the wax is cold. Ask him how long a seal stays warm when a man's hand trembles." The captain glances up the bank. The fort clerk stands there, hat crushed in his fist, eyes not liking any of this. Behind him, a second column of blue has formed a neat square. Their sergeant looks annoyed that the morning's sermon started without him. Harlan spreads his hands. "Captain, you don't need a miner's puzzle. You need order." He gestures at Eliza. "This woman harbors a thief and a malcontent. She ferried cattle that were not hers." "Whose cattle?" Eliza asks, still kneeling. "Show me the track that says your brand was born on hide and not hammered on hoof." She pulls the brass ring, lens from her pocket, and holds it up. Sun slides through. It makes a small, bright eye on the sand. This fell from Nix's scope. It was ground poor. It scratches the truth. Let it scratch again. Nix swallowed. He tries to look anywhere but the captain's face, and finds Marta's instead. She does not help him. She lets her gaze pass through him like smoke through a sieve. Chaska steps to the edge of the mud bar, squats, and points at a hoof print fresh as a bruise. The crescent of the hoof brand shows in the rim. He speaks so the captain can hear, and so the land does not feel mocked. "A hoof wears different than a hide," he says. "A burn on hide sits flat when a horse stands. A mark on a hoof leans backward when it lifts, and forward when it plants, because the hoof grows and you shave it. See here." He touches the rim. It leans. A man who made this wanted the ground to lie, so he could claim the horse by its track. He wanted. Chaska looks at Marta then, and in his eyes there is the kind of respect you give a rattler, serious, not friendly, a mark that follows a horse even when it runs free. The captain squints at the print. He squints at the lens. He squints at his morning. It does not get simpler. He turns to the clerk. "You stamp the Combine's papers," he says. "You warm the seal." The clerk licks his lips. "Yes, sir." "On what?" The clerk's eyes slide toward the river, as if words might float away. "On the desk slab." "Which is made of?" "Stone." "What kind of stone?" "Sandstone, sir." It takes the ring well. Could a man cut ledger lines into a slab like that? Yes, sir. Could a man bring a slab like that from a cabin and set it on another man's table? The clerk's throat works. If he was strong, sir. Could a man burn a name out of such a slab? The clerk flinches, as if someone touched a nerve through his shirt. Yes, sir. Did such a man? The clerk closes his eyes. He opens them. Yes, sir. The day the ferry changed hands. The man said the old owner was dead. He said the line would only bring trouble to a living brother who had helped the army and made enemies for it. He said mercy would be to burn the name and leave the deed. His voice thins. I pressed the seal because I believed him. A sound moves through the crowd. It has 1,000 shapes. Satisfaction, disgust, shock. The small relief of a truth that finally sits in the right chair. Eliza stands with her hands at her sides. I burned the name, she says. Not the clerk. Me. She looks at Chaska. I did it because I thought Harlan had killed the man who signed it over. I did it to keep the brother alive. The world quiets around that line. Chaska's face doesn't break. It shifts, like a ridge after frost. Who is the brother? He asks, already knowing the shape of the answer. Eliza breathes. The man who signed is called Samuel Calder. In the book, that is not his first name. She searches Chaska's eyes, so she does not look away when the hurt lands. He was a Lakota scout who worked for the army 2 winters. He walked me out of a blizzard that should have kept me. She swallows. He wore the name Sam in town, so men would not make his real name their toy. On the ledger he signed that name. I burned it, because if the Combine got it, they would carve it into every door. He is your brother in blood. He told me that much. He said you did not speak his Christian name. He said where you come from, you don't speak the true names of the dead. Chaska's shoulders lift and fall. Wind moves the long hair by his jaw. We do not, he says. We speak around. We say brother. We say the color he wore. We say the horse he loved. We do not say the name after the spirit turns. He nods once. You kept that for me. Eliza's eyes wet. I also took your ground, she says. I burned a line that belonged to your family. Chaska looks at the ledger stone. You paid a price I did not ask you to. You owe me nothing. We owe each other a thing men who live by paper forget, to keep breath in the right bodies. Harlan laughs once, a dry bark that doesn't fit his face. A pretty story, he says. A woman with a burned rock, a tame scout, a preacher who likes bells. Captain, these people have wasted your morning. Arrest them so I can put beef in your yard. Marta steps forward with patience, sharpened thin. My brother offers stability, she says to the captain. He offers rates and schedules and bridges. This woman offers a stone and an old hurt between nations you do not belong to. Eliza faces Marta. You set the child's satchel with the torn parish leaves, she says. You carried the captain's coffee yesterday and left the seal warm. You told the river which story to carry. She nods at the hoofprint. But you forgot the angle of growth. Marta's eyes cool another degree. I forget nothing, she says. I merely choose what matters. Today, this matters. Eliza lifts the lens and holds it over the print, so the circle of light shows the lean. Even a captain can see a lie when the sun draws it. The captain straightens as if a string pulled him. He looks at his men. He looks at the sheriff, who suddenly finds a beetle near his boot worth studying. He looks last at Harlan. Mr. Pike, he says, voice dry, you will surrender your hoof iron to my sergeant. You will present your cattle lists in my office at 3. Any stock whose mark is proved on hoof, not hide, will be seized as evidence. Harlan stares. He is not used to doors closing toward his face. You make a mistake, he says softly. Perhaps, the captain answers, but it will be mine, not yours. Marta's smile thins to a hair. Captain, she says, be certain you can finish the bridge we promised when you close our accounts. Bridges can wait, he says. Law can't. Harlan moves then, quick and ugly. He lunges for the ledger stone. If he cannot own it, he will drown it. He kicks the canvas, boot striking rock. The stone tips and slides. Water mouths the edge. Eliza grabs for it and catches slick fabric. The weight drags her. The river pulls like a patient hand. Chaska is there first. He plants his heels, ropes the stone with his raw hide like a calf, and locks the wrap across his back the way he taught Eliza not to, taking the burn so the pull won't take his hands. "Hold," he says, and the word is to himself, to the rope, to the river. Soldiers spill forward, hands on the line. Hollis flings himself onto the strap with a grunt. The child sits hard on the canvas, like a little queen, on the last inch of throne. Harlan grabs the other end and pulls the other way, using the current like a mule uses downhill. For a heartbeat, he has it. Then, the sand under his boots shears. The river takes his foot, then his balance, then his word. He stumbles forward to save himself and goes knee first into a pocket of quick deep. Gumbo folds around his leg with the intimacy of something that plans to keep what it gets. "Nix!" he shouts, voice high now. "Rope!" Nix hesitates. His eyes flick to the captain, to Marta, to the hole around Harlan's knee. He throws the rope. It falls short. Marta does not move. The only sign of a thought in her is the small muscle that blinks near her jaw. She watches the river decide. Eliza meets Chaska's eye. Every story in the Badlands has this moment, mercy or justice. She could let Harlan learn the land's last lesson. The river will write a straight line over him, or she can pull. She can add a man she hates to the count of the living. She hears the quiet thought of a winter count picture, a hand on a rope, not letting go. "Pull," she says. Chaska nods. He does not say a word about debts or names. He leans and gives Harlan the same strength he gave the rock. Soldiers, preacher, woman, child. Every hand takes the strain. Harlan kicks and finds ground, and crawls to stability on knees and curses. He lies there heaving, hat gone, cuffs dirty, dignity paid out like rope. He looks up at Eliza with a face no longer made of iron. "It's meat now. You should have let me go," he says. Eliza wipes mud from her palm onto her coat. "I'm not you." The captain's sergeant clears his throat. "Sir," he says to his officer, "we got men who can carry that stone?" "We do," the captain says. He looks at Eliza. "Will you bring it to my office?" "Whole, unwashed. It breathes better where the river can see it," Eliza says. "But I'll bring it." Hollis laughs once, bright and cracked. "We have witnesses," he says, sweeping a hand at the mess of uniforms, hats, and mud. "We have rope burns and hoof marks. We have a bell that still rings." Marta steps back from the edge of the bank. Skirts, clean, eyes unreadable. She tips her head to the captain. 3:00, she says. "We will bring our lists. We will bring our iron." She looks at Eliza then, and for the first time, the respect is real. You lifted the wrong stone at the right moment. Not many can tell the difference. She turns and walks away without a flinch, as if the river is part of her plan, not her problem. Nix follows, spit muddy, eyes small. Balmer trails holding his limp wrist, face gray. The sheriff pretends to be tired of sun. Chaska ties the ledger stone to a drag and sets 2 soldiers to the pull, who look like they could lift a yoke of oxen without a yoke. The child walks between Eliza and Hollis, one hand in each, bead warm in her palm. She looks back once at the ford, where the water erases recent trouble, as if it never happened. The rope marks on her wrists are already fading to memory. Fort Klein's office smells of dust, ink, and beef. The captain clears his desk by the old method, shoving things off with his forearm until wood shows. They set the ledger stone there. It looks right. It looks like it has waited for this table a long time. The clerk washes his hands slowly, as if he can take off yesterday. He sets his seal by the ledger stone, then pulls his hand away, as if it bit him. He brings out the books, names, numbers, the combine's tallies. Eliza sets the brass ring lens beside them. Chaska lays a hoof iron on the floor. One of the sergeant's men took it off a combine horse, while Harlan got scolded by river mud. At 3, Marta arrives with her papers straight as fences. Harlan comes late and quiet, a man who tasted a new thing and didn't like it. The sheriff looks at his boots and waits to agree with whoever wins. They read. They walk through days. They lay one track beside another and see where the lies lean. The captain does not rush. He asks questions that sound simple and turn tricky when you answer them fast. He makes marks you can't erase with a foot. When he finishes, He closes the biggest book and places his palm on it, the way a man swears without saying the words. Mrs. Merrick, he says, this fort recognizes your right to operate the Powder River Ferry until such time as a lawful bridge is built by parties not under investigation. We will pay levy on combine cattle crossing to the government, not to the combine, pending inquiry into branding practices. Mr. Pike, you will remain within the fort's jurisdiction until the inquiry concludes. Harlan starts a sentence and stops halfway through it. The sheriff starts another and swallows it whole. Marta smiles her hair-thin smile. Congratulations, she says to Eliza, and makes it sound like a funeral note. You won the old year. The new one begins now. Then I'll build in it, Eliza says, with my hands. The meeting breaks the way meetings always do. Too slowly for those who want blood, too quickly for those who want poems. Hollis lingers with the clerk, talking about seals and sins. Soldiers shoulder doors and pretend not to hear the combine's low growl through paper walls. The child stands on tiptoe to touch the ledger stone's edge and whispers something only stone should keep. Eliza walks into the yard. Sun lies warm on barrels, on boots, on the old cannon that points at nothing. Chaska stands in the shade of the gate arch, braid dark against the wall, eyes on the far hills. He looks like a man standing at a road that forks in 2 good ways and 2 bad ways, and you can't tell which is which until your boots choose. She joins him. For a while they say nothing. Fort noise moves around them like current. Finally, Eliza says, I'm sorry for the name. Chaska shakes his head. I won't say it, he answers. Not because of what you did, but because of what my people do. We do not tie the spirit by saying it when the mouth it lived in is gone. He lifts the blue bead and lets it rest in his palm. When my brother went to the soldier camp, he wore a new sound in town. I did not like that sound. I did not like the work it was used for. But he brought a starving woman out of a storm. He did that. That is the color I count for his winter picture. Eliza's throat thickens. I did what I knew, she says. It wasn't enough, and it was too much, both at once. That is what most true things are, he says. The child runs out then, and flings herself at Chaska's leg. He scoops her up without thinking, and sets her on his hip. She leans her cheek against his braid, as if she had done that all her life. Hungry, she announces. Good, Eliza says, laughing for real. Hungry means we won. They walk down to the river in late light. The ford glows dull like hammered copper. Eliza kneels to test the ferry rope. The knot Chaska tied holds like a promise that has learned patience. She touches it and feels the canyon hum in her fingertips. The cave breath out, the small tally marks cut by someone who needed to see years in a line. She hears a hawk somewhere. She hears a bell in her mind. She hears her own house falling like a tree in snow and does not break at the sound. The ledger stone lies in the fort on a table that used to be tray, and the table has to hold it now. That night, the mission's crooked bell rings for service, though there is none. Hollis says it is a habit his hand kept. He hands out bowls of stew that taste like everything that didn't go wrong. The child eats with both hands and a certain dignity. When she's done, she holds up her wrists. Eliza rubs a salve Chaska made from a plant that looks like sage and smells like winter medicine. The red fades. You will keep the ferry? Hollis asks. I will, Eliza says. Until the bridge? He asks. Until the river says, she answers. A bridge is a guest here. The river is the landlord. Chaska smiles, with only his eyes at that. In the last dark before dawn, Eliza wakes, too, the sound of wind feeling its way along the cottonwoods. She steps outside. The stars are chips of bone. The land is quiet, in a way that means it's listening, not sleeping. She holds the blue bead and whispers a name she will never repeat where anyone can hear. She says it once to the air because she owes it that shape formed in breath. Then she lets it go where it belongs. The day after, soldiers haul a crate of hoof irons to the captain's office. The sergeant drops one and it rings like guilt. Nick slips away from the combine herd with nothing but an ugly grin and a thirst. Ballmer keeps his wrist bound and learns to open doors with his left hand. The sheriff counts dust motes and files nothing he can be blamed for. Marta sends a letter east on a coach with neat springs. Harlan sits in a fort room and watches the wall teach him how to be quiet. He does not like the lesson. He may not learn it. Eliza and Chaska rebuild what the fire took, and the river spared. The ferry plank gets planed smooth. The line gets a new lash point higher in the cottonwood, so a freshet won't take it. The girl learns to call depths by color, and throw a coil so clean it lands like handwriting. Men pay in coin, in beef, in thanks. One gives a little bag of glass bits ground thin by hooves, beetle green and sky white. Eliza strings them and ties the blue bead at the center. She hangs it on a nail by the door where the sun finds it at noon. News runs like creek water, some of it true, some of it wearing True's coat. People say the Combine will build their bridge at a different bend, where the army will not watch so close. People say Marta married a banker's ink and will own the bridge without touching a plank. People say Harlan plans to go south. People say he plans to stay, to make the land say his name right. The winter count that year shows a picture, a circle with a dark line across, the breathing cave, and a small bead drawn in blue beside a rope. In one corner, a hoof with a crooked crescent leans exactly the wrong way. In the bottom line, a flat stone sits on a soldier's table and a hand rests on it, not to keep it down, but to let it be still. The story ends where the first oath started, at the river, late spring. Ice has done its mischief and gone. New grass cuts the wind soft. Eliza ferries a wagon across with a woman and 3 kids and a mule that regrets all mules ever born. On the far bank, the woman pauses. "You alone here?" she asks. Eliza looks at the child skewering fish on a willow spit with serious care. She looks at Chaska, walking the upstream bank, where the new lash point sings a low song. She looks up at the fort on the hill, where a desk holds a stone that will not go back under a hearth. "No," she says, "not anymore. The camera in your head should hold one last frame. Wind dying over a hoof iron cooling where a soldier tossed it. The blue bead warming in a palm. The river erasing a cruel print and leaving the honest ones deep. If you stayed to the end, tell me where you're watching from. And when the next winter picture is painted, come back. There's another river bend that needs a witness. If this pulled you in, tell me where you're watching from. Stay. When we reach Split Tooth, you'll learn why Chaska never speaks his brother's true name."